Good day, it's Pete the Polymath. Now, I thought I'd spruce up my appearance a bit by wearing a classic seersucker tie, circa 1992. So I actually wore this while I was working as a radiographer as a kind of protest, together with my mismatching football socks. Yeah, it was crazy, amazing days, and I loved it all. Anyway, this is actually a cellar, and it was dug in 1992. It's more than 2 meters deep. I think it's about 220 deep, and it's very, very wide, and it's about like 180 or so across this way. Like it's a big cellar. Now, I dug it by shovel. Initially, just as far as I could go down with throwing dirt out with a shovel, and then using pulleys to haul buckets up. And when I dug down to where the ground was hard and dry, I would stop digging, pour in 200 litres of water, and then come back in a week's time and begin digging again. And it's flooded in various ways over the years, and you can see some of the flood damage behind me. Anyway, I wanted to talk a bit about what I'm trying to do. And you know, you've seen my videos, and most of you have seen my video on knowledge. And then the others are spin-offs from that, perhaps. That's where I've got like 450 new subscribers in the last week, and the most numbers of comments, and the most number of likes, and the most number of shares. Like, this last week, I've had 1,100 shares. Now that is unheard of in the world of some amateur working alone, speaking to camera. And I'd like to thank you for joining in what I believe is the beginning of a necessary revolution. And that is to change the world by changing what we are as humans, by upgrading into true humans, to gain authenticity as the foundation for what it is that we are thinking about in our behaviour. We take what has always worked from our ancestral past and we bring it back into this time and make it work here, because that's where our psychology developed. That's where all of our neurology, our thinking and our tool making and everything that happened there. Now the mains of cause for this sudden surge in creativity and effort after 17 years of almost having no success, even though I'm slogging away and trying to make it, has been the Iran war. The reason why it began, the consequences on the global economics, trade, everything that we rely on is now up in the air. Well, it's been bombed to the ground, perhaps. We no longer live in a reliable, predictable future. Whatever we thought was going to happen this year is not going to happen. All of those dreams, all those aspirations are gone. Perhaps the effect will just be paying twice as much for petrol. Well, I say we should be paying more, because petrol is basically theft from the ancestral past of this planet, and it's ruining the atmosphere. It's causing climate change. It's doing a lot of trouble, and we've been breathing these fumes in our cities for as long as we've been driving cars and burning coal and gas in our cities. So it's time we get to breathe good air in the cities, and it's time we can actually catch the rain off the roofs in our cities. It's time for the rivers and streams that flow through our cities to be clean and filled with amazing wildlife. And we can perhaps even catch some fish or some yabbies, or we can grow oysters in our city, just like they did 100 years ago or so. We can bring back that kind of paradise if we can break out of this dependence on fossil fuel. And we were born into an era where fossil fuel was the thing. And I say that is, in a religious term, original sin. which is you're born into a time and you assume by the very reason that you exist that it must be successful and this must be the way that it's done. Now, we look back to our ancient ancestors and nothing much really happened between being born and looking up at those people and who they were and what they looked like and what they were doing, to us eventually sort of growing up and becoming those elders, or those adults and elders and stuff. We became that. There's almost no change. And so from the earliest stages of our learning to become human in our ancestral history, it was absorb all the stuff we need to know so that we can be adults that will be successful as well. You can see it's a kind of imprinting. Now that's caused us an enormous amount of trouble because we know that one decade is not like the last decade, and we know that in a decade's time it's not going to be like this decade. It's continually changing. So then we seem to believe that change is the normal way of existing. Well, no, it's not. Change is gambling. It's like just saying, well, I have no way of predicting the future and I have no way of changing it. So why worry? Why bother? We're sold on the idea of being able to fill our cars with petrol and diesel. And so it wouldn't be wrong if these people are actually telling us to do it. And they're telling us that we not only need to do it, but our economy relies on us doing it. And who makes the money out of this? It's these massive corporate entities. And do they do it all by themselves? No, they rely on massive subsidies by various governments. And do they pay taxes? Well, mostly not. Do they ruin the landscape? Yes, they do, with their pipelines and with their oil spills on the ocean and all of this sort of stuff. It's such a stupid thing. At least we got rid of the lead. It took us, like I found out, the lead in the petrol was killing us in 1973. A teacher told us that, and we were like, whoa, like anti-knock and all that sort of stuff. But it took like decades for us to actually sort of get rid of the lead because it was too expensive. And just like with the ozone layer depletion, it's too expensive to change, and so we have to keep on destroying it. We got no choice. And so we banned it, and within years we had the choice. They're all there. We replaced all the chlorofluorocarbons. We can make any change we like, but we have to be motivated to make that change. We can't rely on the people who think they know what they're doing, being in positions of power and authority, the rich and the lawyers and the bankers and the politicians. We can't rely on them doing the right thing. Now, consider what leadership was as far as what we are as these high-order primate humans. Where did leadership come from? Now, we know an enormous amount about leadership. We can look at the bonobos and we can look at the chimpanzees and sort of get an idea that, and gorillas, we can get an idea that leadership for a long time wasn't relying on wisdom. It was relying on brute force. At least with the chimpanzees, it was do what I want, follow me, or I'll beat you up, or I might even kill you, or I might just kick you out of the tribe completely. With the bonobos, they found another way, which was don't fight, make love. And if we can't make love, well, let's mutually masturbate each other. Anyway, we don't have to do any of those things anymore. We form our relationships based on what we generate as a personality, what qualities we have as someone who has the knowledge and the skills and stuff to live within the world. But it ends up being like the rich seem to be more attractive than the poor. It just seems like if you're going to have a relationship, you better have one with someone who's going to be rich. Otherwise, you're going to be poor. It's more fun being rich than it is being poor. Well, I'm trying to change all of that. I'm trying to say, well, the qualities we need to produce are the qualities that have always been valued by the ancient times, such as the ability to sing, the ability to act, to paint, to perform in various kinds of ways, to go through the rituals and ceremonies. As you can see in my past catalogue, I've been doing that stuff for 35 years, inventing the stuff that has been lost to history, bring it back, giving people a profound archetypal experience that transforms them. Now, if you are inspired enough to become a singer, and if you are already a singer, if you're inspired enough to become an overtone singer, and through that become a master of human sound, master of your instrument that you were born with, the instrument that was the source of your very creation, well, in 3 years' time, we can be filling sports stadiums with choirs of tens of thousands. And we can have the conductors of those things. They can be looking at spontaneous choir and saying, yeah, that's the way to do it. Or we can bring in people with classical training and so they can apply their kinds of skills and stuff. And if you're interested, look up this guy called Jacob Collier, a young bloke, brilliant musician, brilliant vocalist. He even does a bit of overtone singing. See the way he can bring in these crowds of people that are probably already working in choirs, and they've come along knowing that they'll be singing in these enormous halls, and he can just conduct them simply in massive harmonies and stuff, and everyone has this incredibly wonderful time, because it is a kind of incredibly wonderful time that humans have always had, and now is pretty much universally missing. And we know that that psychology, we as humans, as social creatures, we need to get along with total strangers. One of the ways of doing that is singing with them, sharing emotion through voice, sharing the expressions of I'm harmless and I'm happy and let's be friends. We can do that. I've been experimenting with that stuff, as I say, for a long time. I went from spontaneous choir to inventing mud tribes so that I could experiment more with the psychology of the status of a ruler rather than just being the leader of the choir. So actually being a leader of a pack of naked, painted, muddy people and stuff, and only speaking gibberish, so that we're forced to cooperate and forced to act. And doing that at one particular kind of festival called Confest, where we were then a subculture within this other alternative culture that accepted us. And then we interacted with them. They all knew it was a joke. They were in on the joke. They played along with the joke. And so you don't have to watch some sitcom on TV getting a laugh from that. You can actually immerse yourself in real performance comedy as individuals when there is no audience at all. Incredible. Transforming lives, getting people to feel truly human, and getting past all this sort of this stuff about naked being threatening or horrible or sexual or stuff like that. No, naked is what we're born into. Naked is what we were in Africa before we left there and had to live in Europe. And clothing was used to sort of perhaps to tone down this bonobo thing about wanting to have sex with people all the time. It could be a problem. It can cause a lot of hassles and stuff. And we, as I said in previous videos, the thing about humans is that we got out of this idea of just randomly having sex and producing children just randomly. That's not positive, directional, influenced evolution. We positively select, we artificially select to ensure that our children are not ugly, stupid, and inconsiderate. Anyway, so leadership. Like, I can't be a leader of this kind of world. You could never elect me into politics. But some of you certainly can. You've got those administrative skills. You've got those like economic skills. You've got those people coordinating kind of skills. You've got all of that stuff, or you know how to get that stuff. And now you just have to say, well, I'm on a project now that's going to take years to get, just like you would if you're going to university to upgrade your skills and do the night school and things like that. It takes effort. You can study the books, you can go study the YouTubes, you can look at the wiki, you can search the internet, you can do all these amazing things whenever you want, whenever you like. And I advise you to think very carefully about what you're doing with your spare time. Are you wasting time by staring at a TV set? That goes nowhere. You might get a bit of a news update, and maybe you might watch a documentary and sort of stuff, but you're being exploited. You're being conned. They're getting you to watch so they can make money. And that's also the case for a lot of YouTubers as well. They are making their product so they can make money off you. But there is this quality control that's built into that. I'll only watch your video. I'll only like it. I'll only comment. I'll only share if it is really good. I'm not going to do that if it's all bullshit. And like, I'm getting quality responses, and I recommend that you go through the comments section of my videos and just see these people pouring their hearts out, like trying to pat me on the back from the other side of the planet. Like, it's absolutely incredible what's been happening this last week. I've been overjoyed. And the consequence of that is I'm so tired from insomnia that I go to bed early and I wake up 3 hours later and it's 12 o'clock. And I don't fall asleep again until 6. And one of the problems of living off the grid is that when there's a cloudy day, I've got no sort of battery reserve kind of thing sort of there to fall back on. And so I can't sort of watch too many videos. I can't, my fridge might not work. And so I'm a bit restricted in what I do because I'm so far away from mainstream. But I hope you see what I'm getting at. And also, when I produce a video, there's this thing called description that you don't get to see very much of. Most of it's sort of hidden completely. You have to actually sort of click on it to actually sort of get this description thing to drop down, and you can actually read what's going on. Now, I recommend you do that. I recommend you make sure that is what you do, to make sure that you understand what it is that this video is directed at. So you have some kind of overview, so you're more in a place where you're able to digest what it is that you're going through. Now, because you've been so overwhelmed and thrilled by what I've done so far, what you can do is go into this sharing thing that, like I say, that 1,100 people have already done in this last week, and that is copy the shared thing. You watch someone else's video that's on a similar kind of subject, and you post it in the comments section, or you send it off to someone you think will like it. Some distant cousin, some old friends of some group of people that might be interested, and it might sort of wake them up in a certain way and shake them out of their complacency and conformity. And one of the things, like, I've criticised a lot of religion, and some people are getting back at me at that, sort of saying, oh, well, you're not a believer, blah, blah, blah. Religion has built this world and sort of stuff. Well, that's true, but now we move on from the fantasy. It's just like we eventually had to move on from believing in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. It was great at the time. And just like that original sin that I told you about earlier, once you've gotten over those kind of lies, you realise you've been lied to when you're about 6 years old, and then you realise that it's fun and compulsory to actually lie to your younger siblings and your cousins younger than you, and you grow up, you end up being an adult, and then you perpetuate the same lie. It's the same as religion, isn't it? It's also this prototype. It's like you've been tricked into believing one thing at an early age, and then with religion, like you've been tricked into that as well, but you've got nothing to fall back on. You haven't got the education. You haven't got the knowledge, the wisdom, the experience to replace that kind of wishful thinking or even nonsense with the reality of what we are as humans and living in this life with this consciousness on this planet, within this solar system, within this galaxy, within this galactic cluster, within this universe. So that's my recommendation. We become we passed level 1 on the Kardashev scale of civilizations. We don't wipe ourselves out. We actually progress up the scale. We deal with the Drake equation by realizing that there's an extinction that can happen by us just destroying ourselves through war, through microplastics, through destroying the ecosystems that need to support us, by contaminating the land that feeds us. Like we are smart enough to get out of that. And I'm just saying that I know all this stuff. I've been telling people about this for a long time. But you have to know enough to understand what the experts are trying to tell you. Not just me. Like, I'm not an expert in any of these fields. I just understand what the experts have taught me. And I can assemble that whole thing into a model, a mind model of my consciousness within cosmos. I can do that. But only because I've managed to assemble all of these aspects of truth into one whole. It's just like if you had a car, you can try and understand a car from just sort of sitting in it and trying to drive, and you think, what the hell is happening? Why is it doing this? What makes that noise? What gives it the power, and what's caused it to stop? And what are these blinker things like? Or you could actually sort of like opening the bonnet, and you can actually start checking things and realizing you got to put fuel in here and oil in there and water in there, and sort of you got to get it tuned up every now and then. Like, we have to go to our doctors and stuff just to make sure nothing's going to break down and stuff. Like, and then eventually you might have some enormous knowledge that explains everything about what it is what you are when you're driving your car. And you think, great. And then you realise that that's not enough. You have to now learn to drive an electric car. Totally different, but still using the same sort of thing, but maybe it's totally cordless. It's just a remote sort of thing on your hand and you're steering your car with that, or you're prompting the computer in order to tell it to go somewhere or to slow down or to pay attention. Anyway, we've got to become better humans. It's been a long video and I hope I've been able to entertain you with my prattle. Now, this is the conversation skill that I've developed over these years. The 100,000 conversations I've had with different people. And in particular, those 3,000 people that I've had conversations with that have lasted 3 hours or longer. And so for many, many years where I was living, I wouldn't go out with friends to the pub. I would never go to a pub with friends or organise to meet friends in a pub. I would go to the pub solo, completely, by myself. And I would talk to total strangers. Best thing you can do when you're half pissed, isn't it? Break down the barriers, easy to laugh, you joke along with things. I tell my funny story, you tell your funny story. I bring in some incredible sort of concept or some sort of amazing thing that I've done or that I've found out about that's happening in the world, or some science fact and stuff, and something that, oh shit, like that's really interesting, like you're an interesting character. And all the way through my radiography, I was trying to have such an interesting conversation with people that they would go back to their family or their pub, their friends and stuff, and they would say, I went to the hospital, the clinic, to have an x-ray, and I expected to be treated like shit, and I expected an ultimately boring and sterile experience. But instead, there was this amazing person, and we had this incredible conversation in our chemistry, and we just had this amazing sort of thing happening. He told me about this, and he showed me these x-rays and explained all this sort of stuff, and it was an incredible thing. None of my peers did that. And I was only able to do it because I was working in a very special place where I was working for a friend who was a radiographer, rather than working for the hospital, working for the company that's run by radiologists. And there was one time, before I finish up, doing a CT scan, I was telling it's a very boring sort of thing. I was telling my story and sort of inspiring this lady, talking about amazing sort of things. And I found out what she was doing, and our conversation was going really, really well. And I did the CT scan of her, and so and then she's about 70 years old, and she comes out and she says, we're still in conversation. He says she's got to leave and stuff, and I've got to get to actually work. I've got to do all this processing on the computer, digital stuff to finish. And she says, "Can I hug you?" And so I say, "Of course, of course." And I give this amazing hug. Like it was two people that realised they had so much in common, the commonality of the soul and the spirit and the commons of essence and stuff. And I'm becoming a bit emotional just talking about this thing. And so that night I went on Facebook and I said, "Today at work I hugged a woman because we got along so well, and she was so impressed with the conversation and the way I conducted myself and the way the whole thing went. Like she was so like." My boss then told me I should never, ever do that because it puts us in risk of being sued. Wow. A terrible truth, isn't it? We can't show emotion. We've got to be cold. We've got to just do our job, plain, flat face, and let the process grind on. And the whole thing just everything tightening up, just ratcheting up. So every incident, like stop this, stop that, stop this, stop that, until we can't actually do anything of any value because we're too scared to do it. It's a terrible thing, a terrible, terrible thing. And I hope that we can break out of that. Your help. That's what I need. You've got to be inspired enough to actually be part of the reason why we solve this enormous crisis that we're embedded within. So I'm the Pete, the Polymath, and thanks for listening. It's been a great time. I've shed a few tears here at the very end. So I hope to see you again next time, all right? Pete the Polymath, signing out. Thank you.